The first thing I heard was the laughter. Sharp, ugly, and it seemed to curdle the warm air in the room. My adoptive parents were passing my letter back and forth, turning my most private, painful thoughts into a cheap party trick. I just sat there, frozen, watching my adoptive mother, Linda Harper, wipe a tear of laughter from her eye, smudging her mascara with a perfectly manicured finger. Richard, my adoptive father, slapped the mahogany dining table, and his booming laugh rattled the crystal glasses. They were reading my deepest, most agonizing questions about my past, and turning it into a punchline for their friends. It was a crisp autumn evening in our huge suburban Atlanta home, the kind where the fall leaves outside glow like embers under the golden porch light. I was 16 years old, the only black girl at a Thanksgiving table full of pale, smiling faces. There was Richard and Linda, their biological son, Jake, who was 2 years older than me, and a handful of aunts and uncles, their faces flushed with wine. I'd spent weeks, whole sleepless nights, pouring my soul into that 3-page letter. My hand trembled when I sealed the envelope, holding on to this naive little hope that this was it, the key to finally unlocking who I was. But when Linda unfolded it, her eyes, the color of a winter sky, just scanned the words I had bled onto the page. A smirk, slow and cruel, twisted her thin lips. "Oh, you have to hear this," she announced to the table, her voice dripping with a sugary mockery that hurt more than any shout. "It's from Aisha. A little dramatic reading for dessert." She cleared her throat. "Dear Mom and Dad," she began, her voice pitching into a caricature of a scared little kid. "I know you took me in out of pity, but I've always felt like an outsider, a ghost in our own home. Please, after all these years, just tell me the truth about where I came from. Who am I?" She waved the letter like a white flag. Richard snatched it from her, his face red from laughing so hard. "Pity. Honey, we got you for the tax write-off," he bellowed, and the whole table erupted. "Look at her, writing like she's the star of some sad little Lifetime movie." Jake, my supposed brother, snorted and grabbed the letter. "And I quote," he said, putting on a high-pitched, whiny voice, "my memories are just fragments, a woman's voice singing, the smell of something warm, then nothing. So deep, sis. So mysterious." The aunts and uncles nervously chuckled, some looking at their plates, others joining in. My cheeks were burning, but it had nothing to do with the fireplace. Hot, silent tears blurred my mashed potatoes into a soupy mess. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, to smash every single laughing face. But fear, cold and heavy, glued me to my chair. It was the crushing fear that their laughter was the final proof of what I'd always suspected. I was a joke. And I didn't belong. They dismissed my words as a childish fantasy. But they had no idea that what they were holding wasn't just a letter. It was a time bomb. And in 36 hours the truth would explode and their perfect manicured world would never ever be the same. Okay, before we get into what happened next, if you enjoy stories like this, please make sure to subscribe and turn on all your notifications. It really helps the channel a lot. And you won't want to miss how this all ends. Section 1. The backstory and the letter's origin. That night, the sound of their laughter followed me up the grand staircase. I locked my bedroom door, but the click of the bolt felt like a pathetic defense. The rejection was a physical pain, like a shard of ice lodged in my chest. This wasn't the first time I'd felt like an exhibit in their home, but it was easily the cruelest. For 11 years I had been Aisha Harper. Before that I was just nobody. My life was a book with the first 5 chapters ripped out. On the surface, everything was perfect. I lived in a house with a 3-car garage, wore designer clothes, and went to one of the best private schools in Georgia. They gave me a roof over my head, piano lessons I never wanted, and a future they had completely designed for me. But underneath all that, there was this constant, gnawing friction. It was in the little things. Linda sighing with frustration as she tried to deal with my exotic hair, eventually just telling me to keep it braided so it would be neater. It was Richard proudly telling his golf buddies that adopting me was the most charitable thing they'd ever done, like I was a rescued dog. It was Jake and his friends calling me their token, a joke that always made my stomach clench. They loved the image of a happy, diverse family, but they didn't seem to want me. The real me, the one with a past that was just a giant, gaping hole. I was supposed to just assimilate, to let my own heritage dissolve into their world. Act more like us, Linda would gently say whenever I got too loud or had an opinion. You're a Harper now. But I didn't feel like a Harper. I felt like a prop in their family portrait. The whole reason I wrote the letter started a month before that horrible Thanksgiving. I was in the attic, a place I rarely went, looking for an old board game. It was dusty and filled with things from a life I wasn't a part of. Jake's old trophies, Linda's wedding dress, boxes of family photos going back generations. Tucked away in a dark corner, behind a stack of Richard's old business records, I found a small, leather-bound photo album I'd never seen before. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it. The first pages were photos of a younger Richard and Linda standing outside a grim-looking building, the Northwood Foster Services Agency. Then I saw myself, a wide-eyed, terrified-looking 5-year-old in a dress that was way too big. Underneath the photo, a neat, clinical label was pasted. It read, Charity Case Number 47. Charity Case Number 47. Not Aisha. The name was a punch to the gut. It was cold, anonymous, and it confirmed my worst fears. I wasn't chosen out of love. I was acquired. Project. Number. Flipping through the album, I saw more pictures. Me looking lost at a birthday party. Me staring blankly at a Christmas tree. In every photo, Richard and Linda were beaming, but my own smile never reached my eyes. The album just ended. There was nothing before it. That discovery cracked something open inside of me. My real memories were like dream fragments. I could remember a woman's voice, low and sweet, singing a lullaby I couldn't recall. I remembered the scent of jasmine rice and something spicy that would sometimes hit me in a restaurant and leave me breathless with a longing I couldn't name. Then nothing. Just the jarring memory of cold hospital lights and the feeling of strangers' hands on me. The Harpers told me a clean story. My birth parents were young, couldn't cope and gave me up. But Charity Case Number 47 didn't sound like a better life. Sounded like a transaction. So I wrote the letter. I poured all my confusion and desperation onto those pages. I begged them to fill in the blanks, to treat me like a daughter, not a charity case. I honestly, naively, thought that seeing my vulnerability would finally break through to them. I had never been more wrong. Section 2. The morning after and the first clue. The next morning the house was dead quiet. The family had left. A thick, suffocating tension took their place. I stayed locked in my room, watching dust specks dance in the sunlight, feeling like each one was a tiny witness to my humiliation. Around 10, a soft knock on my door. I ignored it. A moment later, a plate scraped on the floor as it was pushed underneath. 2 perfect pancakes, a single strawberry in the center, and a folded note. It was Linda's elegant handwriting. Aisha, sweetie, it read. Don't be so dramatic. It was just a joke. You know we love you. Family sticks together no matter what. Dramatic. The word was another slap in the face. My pain was just an overreaction. My search for who I am was just drama. The pancakes sat on the floor and got cold. The hollowness in my stomach wasn't hunger. It was grief. But their dismissal didn't break me. Did something else. It forged something hard and cold inside me. If they wouldn't give me the truth, I would find it myself. I waited until I heard the front door close. They had left for church, an obligation I was suddenly and conveniently excused from. The house was empty. This was my chance. I flew up to the attic, my heart pounding. I went straight to the corner where I'd found the album. This time I tore it apart. I pulled out Richard's old business files, dusty boxes of tax returns. And there, tucked between files from 2007 and 2009, was another folder. Thin manila file with no label. My fingers trembled as I opened it. It was full of official-looking documents. My adoption papers. I scanned them quickly, my eyes catching the same sterile phrases. Mother, unknown. Father, deceased. The same story. My hope started to fade. But then I saw it. Clipped to the back of the final decree was a small, yellowed newspaper clipping. It was from the Chicago Tribune, dated October 12, 2008. The headline was stark: "Toddler survives Hyde Park house fire. Parents perish in blaze." My breath caught. I devoured the short article. It described a devastating house fire, a suspected gas leak. The parents had been trapped and killed. But firefighters had pulled a little girl, just 3 years old, from a back bedroom. She was alive. The article didn't list any names. It just called it the Thompson family tragedy. Thompson. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thompson was my middle name. Aisha Thompson Harper. The one piece of my identity they'd never erased, but had never explained. They never used it. It was just a ghost of a name. Coincidence. I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. My mind raced. Fire. Dead parents. A surviving toddler. Chicago. The foster agency was in Chicago. I was adopted at 5, 2 years after this fire. Timeline fit. Suspense, sharp and electric, coiled in my gut. This was it. This was the chapter that had been ripped out. My parents hadn't just given me up. They had died. They were stolen from me. And if that was true, then Richard and Linda hadn't just left out details. They had built an elaborate, cruel lie. But why? Why lie about something so huge? Were they trying to protect me? Or was it something darker? The question hung in the dusty air. I had stumbled upon the edge of the truth, and I had a terrifying feeling that looking over that edge would change everything. Section 3. The escalation and ticking clock. The rest of that Sunday was a blur of paranoid tension. I kept the newspaper clipping in my pocket, the brittle paper a secret against my skin. When the Harpers got home from church, their faces were masks of strained cheerfulness. Linda tried to hug me and I actually flinched. "We're worried about you, Aisha," Richard said, his voice dripping with a paternal authority that now sounded totally fake. "This obsession with your past isn't healthy." I didn't answer. I just went to my room, the lie a toxic wall between us. I needed more, but I didn't know where to look. Then I thought of Jake. He was older. Maybe he'd overheard something. He was usually a jerk, but sometimes I saw a flicker of something softer in him. I found him in the garage, the air thick with the smell of gasoline. He was hunched over the engine of his vintage Mustang. "What do you want?" he asked, not looking up. I took a deep breath. "I know you think the letter was stupid," I started. "But I found something. An old newspaper article about a fire in Chicago. The Thompson family tragedy." Jake froze. He slowly straightened up, wiping his greasy hands on a rag. For the first time he looked right at me, and his eyes were wide with something that looked a lot like fear. "You need to drop it, Aisha," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Seriously. Just leave it alone." "Why?" "Press. Did you know? Did you know my parents died in a fire?" He glanced nervously toward the house. "Look, it's complicated, okay? Mom and Dad. They did what they thought was best. Just drop it. For your own good." His voice cracked. He wasn't being a jerk now. He was scared. He knew something and he was terrified of it. Before I could ask anything else, he practically bolted from the garage, leaving me with 1,000 new questions. What could possibly be so complicated it would put my own brother in a panic? I found out that evening. Richard called me into his study. He sat behind his enormous oak desk, his fingers steepled. "We saw you snooping in the attic," he said, his voice cold as steel. "And I hear you were interrogating your brother. This stops now." "I deserve to know the truth," I said, my voice shaking but firm. His eyes narrowed. "The truth. The truth is we saved you. We gave you a life most kids would kill for. You need to understand your place. Blood is blood, Aisha. And you are not our blood. Be grateful for what you have and stop digging, or you might not like what you find." The threat was there, clear as day. You might not like what you find. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. Blood is blood was the final twist of the knife. He was drawing a line, separating me from them completely. I backed away, my heart racing. Was my place here so conditional that one wrong step could get me kicked out? Sleep was impossible. Around 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. Text from a blocked number. My breath caught. The message was short and terrifying. Check the safety deposit box at First National Bank. Key is in Linda's jewelry drawer. The truth hurts. Be careful. I sat bolt upright, my pulse thundering in my ears. A safety deposit box. Who was this? Jake? Or was it a trap? The specific location of the key made it feel terrifyingly real. A new resolve settled over me. I wasn't going to be scared away. I was going to see this through to the end. Adrenaline surging, I crept out of my room and down the silent hall. I slipped into my parents' bedroom. They were asleep. Linda's jewelry box sat on her vanity. My hands shook as I carefully lifted the lid. There, taped to the velvet underside of the top tray, was a small, cold silver key. I clutched it in my palm. The bank wouldn't open for hours. My letter had been mocked 12 hours ago. The 36 hours had started now. Section 4. The safety deposit box reveal. Had to wait. I faked a headache to stay in my room all morning, feeling like a spy in my own home. My chance came at lunch. Linda had a salon appointment, and Richard always went to the club. The moment their cars were gone, I was out the door. I grabbed my bike from the garage just in case they were tracking my car, the key digging into my palm. I walked into the cool marble lobby of First National Bank, my heart hammering. I approached a kind-looking teller named Patricia. I had my story ready. "Hi," I said, trying to sound steady. "My parents, Richard and Linda Harper, sent me to get some documents from their safety deposit box. They said you'd have the signature card." Patricia smiled warmly. "Of course, dear. Box number." I showed her the key. She checked her system. "I see the box, but policy requires one of the owners to be present. I can't let you in alone." Panic flared. "Oh," I said, thinking fast. "Right. My dad, Richard, he's actually in the car. He's on a really important conference call. He said if there was an issue, I could call him and he could talk to you." I pulled out my phone, pretending to dial, praying she wouldn't call my bluff. She hesitated, then sighed. "Well, it is against protocol, but I know Mr. Harper." "All right. Just this once. But you tell your father he owes me one." Relief washed over me, so intense it made me dizzy. She led me into the vault, used her key and mine, and slid out a long metal box. She showed me to a private room and left me alone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely lift the lid. Inside, my whole world fell apart. On top was an envelope. Inside it, my real birth certificate. Aisha Evelyn Thompson. Mother, Maya Thompson. Father, Daniel Thompson. It was real. I had parents. Underneath was a sealed lab report. DNA test. Paternity test, but not for Daniel Thompson. It was for Richard Harper. The result was stark. 99.99% probability. I stared at it, my mind refusing to work. Richard. My biological father. It was impossible. The final item shattered everything. A long, handwritten letter from my biological grandmother, a woman named Evelyn Thompson. "My dearest Aisha," it began. "If you are reading this, it means the truth has finally found you. I have tried for years to reach you, but the Harpers have kept you hidden behind a wall of money and lies." I read on, my blood turning to ice. Evelyn wrote about the fire. It wasn't an accident. It was arson. My parents, Daniel and Maya, had been murdered. She claimed they got involved with a shady business partner who took out a massive insurance policy on them, then had them killed. She wrote that after the fire I was lost in the system, and that's when the Harpers swooped in. They used their money to pay off a corrupt judge and fake documents to claim I was abandoned. They had stolen me before Evelyn, my legal next of kin, could get custody. My hands shook, rattling the papers. The mockery at dinner wasn't just casual cruelty. It was the panicked defense of people sitting on a huge secret. This wasn't a pity adoption. It was a kidnapping. Richard and Linda weren't my saviors. They were my captors. Fury, hot and pure, burned through me. The life they gave me was a lie, a gilded cage built on the ashes of my real family. I shoved the documents back into the box. I had to confront them. The 36 hours were almost up. It was time for the truth to come out. If you're still with me, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave a like and share this video because you're going to want to see what happens when I walk back into that house. Section 5. The confrontation and the first twist. I biked home in a daze. The pretty tree-lined streets of my neighborhood now looked sinister, like the perfect lawns were hiding terrible secrets. I felt a strange and awful power holding those documents. They were my truth. They were my weapon. I didn't wait. I walked straight into the house. Richard was in the living room, and Linda was arranging flowers. They looked up, annoyed and concerned. "Where have you been?" Linda started. "You had us worried sick." I didn't let her finish. I walked to the coffee table and slammed the safety deposit box down. The metal clanged, loud and final. "Explain this," I said, my voice dangerously steady. I pulled out the contents one by one. The birth certificate, a letter, the DNA test. I laid them out like a verdict. Linda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Richard shot to his feet, his face turning a blotchy red. "What is this? Where did you get that?" he blustered, his eyes wide with panic. "This is fake. It's all lies." "Am I?" I shot back, my voice rising. "Is it a lie that my parents were Maya and Daniel Thompson? Is it a lie they died in a fire that was deliberately set? Is it a lie that you paid off a judge to steal me from my real family?" Just then, Jake appeared in the doorway. He saw the papers and his face crumbled. He was the first to crack. "They told me to lie," he confessed, his voice choked with tears. "They told me everything years ago. They said it was to protect you. I'm so sorry, Aisha. I'm so sorry." The room spun. Linda collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing. "We love you, Aisha. We just wanted to be a family. We were afraid of losing you." Richard rounded on Jake. "You fool," he roared, but the fight was gone, replaced by raw fear. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "She was dangerous, Aisha. Your grandmother. We were protecting you. Protecting me. Or possessing me." I yelled, the rage finally breaking through. "You mocked me for wanting to know who I was, while you sat on this. You let me believe I was unwanted, when you had stolen me. You're criminals." The air was thick with guilt and fear. As Linda's sobs grew louder, a new sound pierced the chaos. The wail of sirens, getting closer and closer. My heart leaped into my throat. I hadn't called them. Then who? Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. 2 police cars screeched to a halt outside. A moment later, a hard knock on the door. Richard looked like he was going to be sick. An officer stepped inside, and my eyes were drawn to the woman standing behind him on the porch. An older black woman with regal posture and intense eyes that I recognized from somewhere deep in my broken memories. Evelyn. My grandmother. She must have been tracking my desperate online searches. She'd tipped them off. The police moved towards Richard, talking about fraud and illegal adoption. Linda clutched my arm, hysterical now. "We did love you. In our own way, we did." But her words rang hollow, lost in the storm they had created. Section 6. The final twist and resolution. As an officer put handcuffs on Richard's wrists, Evelyn burst through the door. Her eyes locked on mine with a fierce, possessive hunger. "Aisha," she whispered. "My baby. Found you. I'm here to take you home." She reached for me, but Jake shoved another paper forward. The DNA test. The one that made no sense. "Wait," he shouted. "You don't understand. Look at it." The officer paused, taking the paper. He read it, then looked at Richard, then at me. "This is a paternity test," the officer said slowly. It lists Richard Harper as the biological father. The room went silent. Evelyn froze. My mind short-circuited. It was another trick. But then Richard spoke, his voice ragged. "It's true," he said, looking right at me. His eyes filled not with guilt, but with a deep, crushing sorrow. "Maya, your mother, we had an affair years ago. Before she married Daniel. You were mine, Aisha. But she chose him. She raised you as his." The truth was an avalanche. Richard wasn't my kidnapper. He was my biological father. The Harpers hadn't stolen me. They'd rescued me. "The fire," I whispered, looking at Evelyn. Her regal expression had curdled into something venomous and ugly. "It wasn't an uncle," Richard continued, his voice shaking with rage as he stared at her. "It was her. Your loving grandmother. Maya was going to tell Daniel the truth about you. Evelyn couldn't stand the shame. And she was the beneficiary on their insurance policy. She staged the fire to kill them both. Your mother begged us to take you, to disappear with you, to protect you from that monster. The Harpers had legally adopted me with my own mother's secret consent, to protect me from the woman who had murdered her. Evelyn hadn't been fighting to get her granddaughter back. She'd been stalking the man who knew her secret and the child who was the living evidence of it. Their mockery, their lies. It was all a desperate, clumsy, and cruel attempt to protect me, to keep me from finding the woman who would have silenced me too. My letter had been the spark that forced their hand, a sign that the walls were about to crumble. In the space of 36 hours, heroes had turned into villains, and my captors had become my saviors. Tears streamed down my face as Evelyn, her mask of grief shattered, began screaming vile curses as a second officer took her into custody. The deepest betrayal came from the blood I had been so desperate to find. Collapsed, and Richard caught me. He wasn't Richard anymore. He was Dad. I buried my face in his chest, sobbing with relief and guilt and a love that was more confusing and more powerful than anything I had ever known. The truth hadn't just set me free. It had bound us together in a chaotic, broken, but real family, forged not by lies, but by a terrible, tragic truth. Thank you for listening to my story. It's a reminder that sometimes the truths we search for are far more complicated than we can ever imagine, and family is bound by more than just blood. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Comment below with your thoughts, leave a like, and share this video with others. Your support means the world.